Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Second Alarm podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Ash Patel, who is coming from Cincinnati, Ohio. So, very near and dear to my heart since he's only an hour and a half away, roughly. But Ash is a good friend of mine, and I wanted to talk to or have him on to talk about investing beyond multifamily, primarily because, as we all know, the market is somewhat crazy right now, and I get a lot of calls from people that are looking at alternative assets, and Ash is by far the go-to expert in my book for anything beyond apartments. So Ash, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking today.
Well, Seth, thanks for your time. And again, thank you for doing this. I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's exciting because not only are you primarily do assets outside of multifamily, but you have an event coming up on Wednesday in Cincinnati, which is the name of it, I believe, is investing beyond multifamily. Kind of like you do it twice a year, I believe. But that's what kind of re-sparked this, because we personally in my group is doing a major flex based development, and I know we've had conversations about it, but it really has opened my eyes to some things um, that are outside of multifamily and outside of apartments. So maybe, like, what made you, or how did you get into the space? Buying these types of assets.
It was dumb luck, man. My first property was a mixed use building where I saw that commercial tenants improve my facility and the college kids are destroying my apartments. I would get called out to unclog sinks and toilets and fix holes in walls. And the commercial tenant, unbeknownst to me, would remodel the bathroom. They would replace their entire HVAC system on their dime. And this was many years ago. And I thought, man, how is anybody still a residential investor when you have this class of tenants that improves your property and they're business owners? Talking to them, speaking with them rather, it's speaking with a business owner who's got a vested interest in your building. That's where they get their revenue and their profit and their income from. With these college kids, man, they're just trying to put their 4 years in and, try not to get caught with all the stuff that they're doing, have a good time. But it was a lot of wear and tear. So it was dumb luck. My first property, I saw a mixed use building. It was commercial, residential, fell in love with the commercial side of commercial real estate.
Was it scary for you to transition from like residential and commercial multi to like a strip center or office space or things like that? Because I think that's the biggest hurdle for me initially, was like it's a completely just different animal to even underwrite or to find a tenant, or all of those things. So how did you navigate that?
It probably should have been scary, but that was my first property, was mixed use, right? I honestly just didn't know any better. And then from there, I went into retail, medical, industrial, and each asset class. Once you understand non-residential commercial, you can underwrite different asset classes. It's different marketing, different underwriting, different class of tenants, different lengths of leases, but it's all stuff that I learned just by doing it, buying these assets and turning them around. And most of what I've purchased in my career has been vacant, heavy value add. When we bought, excuse me, a half finished office building where the developer ran out of money. I've bought vacant retail centers before, turned them around. It's not scary once you understand it, and as long as you buy the asset correctly. Right now, Seth, there's a devastation going on with office buildings. All the headlines, these office buildings are going into foreclosure. Everyone thinks it's toxic. Everyone wants to stay away from office. But here's a very simple example of how you can make money with office. If you can buy an office building in an office park for 30 cents on the dollar at a foreclosure auction, you can then afford to lease out that office building, that office space, for $8 a square foot when everyone else is charging 18 to $20 a square foot. Now, granted, there's not a ton of demand for office, but there's still demand out there. If the competition's at $20 a square foot and you can lease it out at 8, you will fill your office building. So
Yeah, I would
there's a
imagine so. If
yeah,
if the next guy next door is 18 to 20 a square foot and you're at 8, I would imagine you would fill that up. How are you have you found, like, the primary way you're finding these types of deals?
one of the best ways is the residential MLS. So when residential realtors post commercial deals, they often misprice them, they mismarket them, And that's where you can swoop in and get tremendous deals on properties. So I've done this where I bought a strip mall for $625,000, sold it, just flipped it for $1 million. The guy that I flipped it to was much more savvier than I was. And this was, year two into real estate investing. Sold it to a guy from New York who's a friend of mine now. He sold it for $1.6 million 2 years later and did nothing to it. May have
Wow.
a couple leases, but these deals are out there, right? Just found a great flex building for $25 a square foot. Um, Throughout my career in investing in real estate, one of the best sources has always been residential realtors listing commercial property. Another one is bizbuysell.com. You know, right now there's a trend for a lot of people buying businesses. So people are increasingly looking at those brokerage websites. Well, when you find a listing that says business for sale, and oh, yeah, real estate's included or will include real estate, call that person up, speak with him or her, and find out what the deal is with the business and the real estate. Would you consider selling the real estate separate? No, I'm done. I want to sell it all together. Awesome. Do you have any buyers that just want to buy the business? Well, yeah, a couple, but again, I want to sell it all together. Okay, how about this? Put me in touch with them. We'll figure out a deal where they sign a lease, they buy the business, and I buy the real estate, right? Just thinking outside the box, Seth. Another way is call up a for lease listing. Now, in the residential world, everybody gets inundated with postcards and mailers and text messages. In commercial real estate, 15 years that I've been doing this, I've gotten one postcard from somebody that said, I want to buy your building, cash, quick close, as is. And it wasn't a mistake. It didn't say, I want to buy your house, your property. It said, I want to buy your building. So nobody's marketing to commercial real estate investors. If you call up a for lease listing, whether you see it on LoopNet, Crexy, Craigslist, or Facebook, whether it's office, industrial, or retail, call up the for lease listing. Say, hey, I'm inquiring about this property that you've got for lease. Can you tell me more about it? They'll go on, okay, listen, I'm not interested in leasing it, but I want to buy the building. And often they'll be taken back and, well, no, it's for sale. Is it for lease? What are you talking about? I'm not selling it. Awesome. I'll follow up with you in 5 days. Call them back in 5 days, and you'll be amazed at how often these landlords, their wheels start turning in those 5 days. Maybe I should sell this. If I do sell it, what price would I sell it for? And you start the conversation.
Yeah. Are you looking for like if you're, and I asked because this is personal experience where I walked some commercial space. It's funny because you talked at our event in April, and then it really got my wheels spinning because you talked about such the high returns that you're seeing that are way higher than what we would normally see in multifamily. But I walked a few that a friend of mine was looking to sell, and it was they were very choppy. There were some like offices in there that had no windows. There was, it was like a one of them was like an old armory that they had chopped up and made put hallways in an office. Like, and it to me it was just so I'm like, who would want to rent in this? So like, how are you when you walk something that's not like maybe a cut and dry retail center or office building? Like, how do you evaluate those to know, hey, if I just do, if I walk an apartment complex, I know, hey, if I do these things, I could get the rents to this, or I could do, this kind of business plan. How do you do that where you walk in and you can kind of see beyond what you're looking at directly? Because that was difficult for me to know like what would the plan be here and who is the kind of like the prospect tenant.
Man, that's a good question. The answer is we don't always know. If it's a market that we're familiar with, sure, we'll know. However, we've bought sight unseen. We've bought in markets that we don't know anything about. So in commercial real estate, and you know this, there's a due diligence period where we can ask for 45, 60 days of due diligence. That's when our earnest money goes hard. And then beyond that, we've got another 30 to 45 days to get our financing in order. So in those 45 to 60 days, you test drive the property. You call up the existing tenants if you're allowed to. Hey, what are you paying in rent? Are you happy here? What improvements does this property need? What's deferred? You start calling neighboring tenants, asking them what they're paying, what they consider moving, and you take out ads, Facebook, Craigslist, Crexy, and you start advertising the space. Now, if the current seller doesn't allow you to advertise, awesome. Just put generic ads out there, put the inside of a storefront, inside of an office building, inside of a medical building, and say, 3,000 square feet for lease in this neighborhood at this price, and see what kind of response you get. So you can test drive the property before you buy it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I never would have thought about that. Do you guys prefer like street corners, like being on busy roads? Like what is the kind of the criteria that you look at when you're looking at some of these?
There's no criteria. Ideally, we would love street corners next to a McDonald's or Walgreens. You don't always find that. So the goal that I've had for a lot of years is try to inspire other real estate investors to take the blinders off, look at every single commercial listing as a potential deal. Don't just look at single families. Don't just look at duplexes or four families or 30 units and above. Every single listing out there is a potential unicorn deal, a huge return deal. So when we buy things that are in rural, middle of nowhere towns, that's okay as long as the cash on cash return is extravagantly high, right? If we're in a city center, downtown, hopping suburb, we'll settle for a lower cash on cash return because we know it's going to be easy to rent, easy to manage. I've bought rural strip malls in very small towns, but the cash on cash has got to be north of 20%. And there's got to be some vacancy that you can fill. There's evidence that you can fill it. We don't ever roll the dice and hope for the best. So, yeah, there's a great buy box of what's ideal, but we will never bypass something just because it doesn't fit that buy box. I'll give you a couple quick examples. In my mastermind, we had two gentlemen from California who found a deal in New Brumsfield, Texas. Had to look it up on the map, didn't know where it was. I had to read the local paper to find out what's going on in that town. Turns out it's a booming tourist town. But the deal that they found was a bar restaurant, Seth, that looked like it was out of a 1920s Western movie. Tin rusted roof, horse troughs outside. And I'm thinking to myself, man, like, why would you guys even consider this? If this tenant ever leaves, it's going to be impossible to lease out. Like, how does this make sense? And what was awesome about this deal is the owner has been there for 15 years. The Google reviews, multiple, hundreds of 5-star reviews, family friendly. There's a playground in the back. They have live bands a lot in the weekends. And they want to sign a brand new 15-year triple net lease. Now, that's still not enough, right? Because I get it. You sign a lease. What if the business fails? It turns out the owner wants to not only sign a 15-year triple net lease, but he wants to personally guarantee it, also have a corporate guarantee. He owns two Golden Corrals that are cash flowing. He's disclosing all of his financials. The guy's got millions in liquidity. This is a home run deal. 15-year triple net lease, no landlord responsibilities. You're basically just buying a high cash flowing asset, and you never will get a phone call about anything. The tenant is responsible for everything. There was another deal, another student found. It was a metal building, just a flex building in a town with about 100 people. And the closest other town was probably 20 minutes away. And I'm thinking again, like, how is this potentially a deal? If this person ever leaves, you're done. You've got 80 people to pick from in this town that can lease out this space. Same thing. Turns out they want to sign a 10-year triple net lease. But in addition, they want to build a 4,000 square foot heated, insulated, cooled metal building on the property. So if they ever leave, you get it all. Plus,
Wow.
they've got a great business. They're disclosing financials. So there's deals everywhere, right? You can't have a specific buy box that, you're only looking for these top performing properties that are easy to manage because that's what everybody's looking for. Escape the competition. Look where no one else is looking. And, speaking of that, multifamily, incredibly competitive right now. I mean, you've killed it, but you're pivoting into developing. How many different asset classes are you developing? You're doing flex space there, multifamily. There's
Yeah,
going to be some.
we're doing the one chunk of land we bought. It's got three different asset classes on it, but we're primarily only going to do the multifamily, and then the other one is we're going to triple the flex space business that is already there. So yeah, that's the which is not too hard to build, but again, it's a different animal than what we're used to, and it's a different business model. And we're buying the business along with all the ground, and so it's a different thing for us. But it penciled out really, really well.
And that's a hell of a pivot, right? So for all the multifamily investors out there, and look, that's why I named my company Invest Beyond Multifamily, because different asset classes have different market cycles. Right now, multifamily is declining, but even though it's declining, there's so much money on the sidelines waiting to get in and waiting to overpay for what multifamily inventory is out there. Same thing with single family homes, right? I've done plenty of those. Not a fan. I can't. I didn't do well dealing with the sob stories and the I can't pay rent this week. Can I get you next month? Awesome. Don't worry about it, man. How you doing? You doing okay? I'd want to make friends with all of them and try to mentor and educate them, and that never worked, right? So look at every single asset class that's out there. Pivot when you need to, right? Go from single families to multi. Go from multi to flex, flex to medical. There's so many different assets out there, and the returns are significantly higher. We'll turn down 12, 13, 14% cash on cash deals all day long if there's not a huge upside on the back end, right? If there's not vacancies, if they're not under marketed, if they're not under rented, we don't want them. We don't want to park money for 13% a year. We want to grow money.
Yeah, and I know that we were looking at one in Marysville, Ohio, back in April when you came to the event. And we ended up walking away from it based on what you had talked about and what we had discussed while you were here, because it just was too. It was more of like a multifamily return, but on a strip center, and it was just not worth the. It wasn't. Wouldn't be able to. It was just too risky for what we were trying to do. So, yeah. So I, and you have more than enough proof for anybody to say, hey, that's not a realistic return. I mean, you've got case study after case study of you continually to achieve it, the people that are around you achieving it. So I know that's kind of like when we've looked at it now, is that's what we're aiming for. And if it's anything less than what Ash said, we're not even looking at it. But one thing that you talked about, then I think that people get either they don't know about it. If they're following me, they probably, they're hearing more multifamily stuff. Um, and so they may not really understand it, but can you just go over like the difference between triple net and like double net and how that all works with tenants? Because it's just so different from if you're a multifamily person.
Yes. So when people think commercial, they often think mailbox money, triple net, sit back on a beach and collect your check, right? Look, you can do that, but your returns are very low. You can buy a Starbucks for a couple $1 million at a 5.5 cap. Your returns are almost non-existent, but you're parking money. That is a triple net property where, if the building burns down, it's up to Starbucks to rebuild it. If their AC goes out, you don't even get a phone call. They pay the taxes, they pay the insurance, all the maintenance. So that's true triple net. There's variants of triple net where we've had strip malls where the landlord is responsible for everything. I have to replace the roof, the parking lot, the exterior lighting, everything. However, I get to charge the tenants back a percentage of all of that, right? So based on their square footage, that's how much they pay towards all of the maintenance items. Now, granted, I still pay them out of pocket, but I get reimbursed. So that's still triple net. And then there's all kinds of variants where there's leases where the landlord is responsible for replacement of mechanicals, the tenant is responsible for repairs. And then there's further variants where the tenant is responsible for up to $2,000 per year for repairs or for individual line items. So the devil's in the details, and that's what makes commercial real estate scary for a lot of people. They think, oh my God, it's too hard. The only hard part is you have to read through all of the leases, and that's how you underwrite the deal. So, for all of the people listening, find a neighborhood strip mall in your area, ask for the leases, and start underwriting them. Read through every word of the lease, and you'll know who's responsible for what. You'll be able to build out your pro forma. Triple net, minimal landlord responsibilities. Double net is where the tenants could pay taxes and insurance, but not maintenance, or taxes and maintenance, but not insurance, or they pay 2 out of the 3. Single net, they pay 1 out of the 3. And a gross lease is what you'll encounter most with mom and pop tenants and smaller properties. So if you have a deli, a pizza shop, a dog groomer, you can't say, hey, look, you're paying triple net. Okay, where do I sign? They don't understand it, right? And when you tell them you owe me this additional money for taxes and insurance, they're going to be dumbfounded because they're used to paying just a single amount for rent. So for smaller tenants, you don't want to try to push triple net onto them. They're small business owners. They budget their rent. They want to pay one flat fee every month. They can't get hit with a huge snow removal bill because there was a blizzard, right? You mentioned something earlier, Seth, and I want to talk to you about multifamily versus office in your market. What's the going price per door on multifamily? Let's say a two
On
bedroom, class
on
B,
for rent.
per door purchase. So if you're
Oh,
buying a 10-unit apartment building,
yeah.
what would you pay per
Yeah, it
door for
depends.
all
I
two
mean,
bedrooms?
if you're in the core, if you're in like the Columbus core area, you're probably over 200, you're 200 to 225 a door, somewhere in there. You know, if you're in a suburb, you know, you're probably still around 180 to 200. And then if you're, you know, if you're in tertiary markets, you know, right now you're probably still at 60 to 75 a door, depending on the condition. I mean, we've bought stuff for, yeah, probably I'd say between 35 and 45,000 a door a couple of years ago. So it really just depends. But you know, there's very few things trading in Columbus under 100,000 a door,
Yeah, you
and
guys are
that's
an
like C
anomaly,
class.
man. Columbus is absolutely on fire. So bad example. I'm going to share the true example. Last week, I spoke at Nate Barger's Burr conference. And again, I was up there trying to encourage people to invest in different asset classes. And after I spoke, a number of people came up to me. They found great mixed use buildings. The guy sitting at my table found an office building, and it was in one of the suburbs of Cincinnati. He is an apartment investor. And he's like, hey, is this a good deal? I look at it, 10 unit, single story office building. Each office had windows. There was, I think, two common bathrooms and one kitchenette. So I said, okay. I'm like, do you think it's a good deal? He's like, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. All right. So you're an apartment investor. Let me ask you this. If there was a 10-unit apartment building, same footprint, all single story, what would you pay per door? He's like, how many bedrooms? I'm like, I don't know, two bedrooms. He's like 14, 1500. I'm like, okay, that's not high enough. What about three bedrooms? He said, there's not that many three bedrooms in that zip code. Fine. We'll just use $1,400 per door, right? In rent. But I said, what would you pay? Sorry, what would you get for rent is 1400. What would you pay per door? He said 80 or $90,000. And I said, perfect. This office building, 10 units, was $380,000. So I said, would you pay 38,000 a door for an apartment, 10 unit apartment building in this zip code? He's like, oh my God, I would jump on it. I said, look, if I get up on that stage and tell all the Cincinnati people there's an apartment I just found, 10 units, 35,000 a door. He's like, dude, it would erupt. Okay, that's what you're buying when you're buying this office building. 9 out of the 10 units were rented. Their rents were $1,800 a month, right? So you're getting $500 more than you would an apartment, and you're buying it for a third of the value per door. And you have no tenants, sorry, you have no toilets, showers. You got two common bathrooms, no showers. It's a 9 to 5 environment, a little kitchenette with a sink, right? So, what a great example of pivoting from multifamily to office. You can use the same metrics, price per door, rent per door, but instead you have office tenants who will sign multi-year leases and they're business owners.
Yeah, you know, I think it's great. I think it's definitely something that people should look at. I've always been, you know, somebody that's kind of preach stay in one lane and focus on one asset. But I do think that there's times when you have to pivot or you have to do something. And you know, the things that you've talked about in the past, at least around me, there's not a huge discrepancy. You know, like it's not like you're going from buying some multifamily to uh this huge strip center, you know, that's $30 million. We're talking about pivoting to just some kind of, like you said, mom and pop office spaces or some other things that are in your area that the returns are much higher. So let's talk about that. Like what, for you and your qualifying criteria, do the returns look like on average that you like? If you said, hey, this is a deal that I like, I'm going to put it out to either you're going to buy it or you're going to put it out to your investors, or somebody in your group comes to you and says, hey, look at this. What is your threshold for that? Because I think that was one thing I learned in April when you talked at our meetup was just how much higher. Like your cutoff was like, I don't even look at if it's not 20% or whatever. I was like, that's crazy. Like to get something that was putting out that much for multifamily was, you'd have to look at 50 deals in order to find something like that, or more. And you were able to find them pretty regularly.
So before interest rates went up, our minimum cash on cash was 20%. Now we'll probably go down to 17, 18, but there's got to be a huge value add, right? If it's just straight deal, fully leased, it's got to be 20%. If it's much lower, there has to be a significant value add component. And again, we're not rolling the dice. Our pro formas have the arrow going down and to the right, and we stress test deals. How much more vacancy can we afford? How much decrease in rent can we handle? And this property still cash flows. If you look through all of our pro formas that we've saved, there's never going to be one where it says, okay, fully leased, this is how much money we can make. We never count on that, right? So, yeah, I mean, we look for value add deals, and they're not a dime a dozen out there. You've got to look again where no one else is looking. And it takes quite a while to find these deals, right?
Yeah. Are you like, how is it? You kind of talked about it with lending that your expected return is lowered a little bit, but how are you feeling it from the lending perspective on, like, are you buying these with, I guess in the past, were you buying with bridge debt? Like how is that working for you? And how is the lending looking at these types of assets right now versus a year ago?
Lenders have tightened up their belt across the board. I was never an advocate of using a lending broker because I wanted to build relationships with the individual banks that are lending to us. And that's the key with the commercial real estate deals that we do is there's no Fannie and Freddie for them. They're not traded on the secondary market. So whichever bank does your loan typically holds it for the life of the loan. Unlike multifamily, unlike residential, this bank is taking a risk. They're banking on you in your deal. But that's also a benefit because the deal has to sell itself. They don't care about my income. They'll look at my balance sheet, of course, but I don't have to meet a strict threshold, right? With residential, you have to have income verifications. You've got to meet all that criteria. Commercial, you have to have the deal, and they don't care where the money comes from. So you can raise capital for it. They're not concerned as long as somebody on the deal has a decent balance sheet and they put 20% down.
Okay.
How it's changed is, different banks won't do development. Certain banks, a lot of banks won't do office. That's where a lending broker comes in because these lending appetites are changing week by week. And these lending brokers know who's lending and who's not. And it could be
Mhm.
a bank in a different state that's new and hungry. So use a lending broker now.
Yeah. And how are you financing the construct? Like, so if you're buying something that's heavy value add, is it traditionally the value add play is new leases and step up in the leases as far as the price per square foot? Like, is that the value add play? Are you buying stuff that is like full renovation, you know, was nothing but four walls and a ceiling, and you got to come in and do all kinds of work? I mean, if you're buying those, how are you funding the construction side of things right
Yeah,
now?
man. Look, I'm not like you. I can't go in there and renovate and do all these things that you guys do to apartments. I want as little work as possible. And by the way, we self manage all of our properties, right? So commercial real estate is way easier to manage than these other asset classes because, again, you have professional business owners as your tenants. And they will often do the work themselves. So I have a restaurant that needed a full gut renovation. I started doing it and I did a little bit of it, but I signed a lease with a tenant and I gave them some money to put towards the construction. They went over the top. They built a speakeasy room that you could never tell is there. They built a giant bar. They did all of the plumbing for their liquor, their beer dispensers. They did new refrigeration. So if they ever leave, all of that stuff stays behind, right? And they put probably $100,000 of their own money into this building. And this happens across the board. We've given salons just a bare bones space, unfinished drywall, no trim on the windows. They put their own time and money. None of our money went into this, and they transform them into high-end salons. We've had churches come in, take a warehouse space, they put thousands of square feet of LVP drywall, they've added bathrooms, they've added lighting on their dime. So this is another benefit of commercial real estate, is your tenants will improve your property. I don't want to get involved in massive construction projects. I'd rather the tenants do it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, that's a huge benefit for you for sure. So, do you have like a type of tenant that you're looking for? Like when if you're evaluating a building, I know like I think you've said before, like hair and nail salons have always been great. Like there's just is it more like you're when you're looking for something, you're looking for the mom and pop business owner, or are you have you do you do stuff where you could get a national tenant in there, or kind of like something anchored by a national tenant, and then have some other smaller businesses in there?
All of the above, and it just depends on the space. So if it's a rural area, you're getting mom and pop tenants, right? If you've got a beautiful strip mall, you can attract national tenants. So it's really par for the course. It's what the neighborhood demands. What I try to avoid is, in certain situations, first time startup businesses, especially for restaurants and bars. Everybody's got, a dream of owning a restaurant or a bar. The problem is it takes a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge to be successful in that business. So anytime I rent out bars, restaurants, it's got to be somebody with a track record. If it's a pizza place, deli, same thing. I want somebody that has experience, or at least has deep pockets that they can fund their business through some hard times. Hair salons, I've had people that were stylists that wanted to open their own salon. Great. Love incubating small businesses. It just varies based on the asset class and where the location is and how nice it is, right? If you've got plenty of parking and it's a beautiful building, you can get the national or regional tenants. If it's, in a class B neighborhood, class B strip center, you might get a discount store. Ross Stores is opening 400 stores. It's just based on whatever specific property you're trying to fill.
Gotcha. All very good stuff. So, what is like? I guess walk me through the conference that you have. I know it starts Wednesday in Cincinnati. I know you did one last year. I believe you guys hosted it in Atlanta. This year it's in Cincinnati. What if people are looking to go or looking to learn? I know that we're going to try to send somebody from our team down. What do they? What should they expect at the conference? What does that kind of like look like for the 3 days that you're hosting people?
I'm going to use your verbiage, man. You're going to get fed through a fire hose, right? We're going to try to inspire you, give you enough knowledge to where we could turn you loose and you can start underwriting these types of properties. I want these people to be able to look at every listing on LoopNet, Crexi, MLS, and be able to underwrite it on their own and start buying some of these non-residential commercial assets. And look, for years, man, I didn't have deep pockets. I bought a $230,000 mixed use building as my first property. The next couple properties were in the threes and fours and fives. Now we're buying five, six, seven, eight, $10 million properties. But start out small, right? Do properties or buy properties in neighborhoods that you're comfortable with, asset classes that are tried and true, places that you can keep an eye on and self-manage easily. So you don't have to go out and buy a $5 million strip center. Buy something that's cash flowing heavily, but it's a couple $100,000 in any town, just about any town, maybe not Columbus. I can find you a commercial building that's the same price as a single family house. So there's no excuse for people to not look at commercial properties. It's too hard. It's too expensive. Excuses, right? We'll train you on how to underwrite them. I just need you to go out there and try to start finding these deals, and you'll see the returns are out there.
Yeah, I think that's something. I had a call with a couple right before we jumped on for this today, and that was one thing that we discussed was one of their goals is having one of them no longer work, and they're looking at multi-million dollar deals, and they haven't done a ton of deals that size. And it's the same advice I gave him was, maybe focus on a smaller deal that cash flows more, because that will really get you to where you want to go quickly. And, and then circle back and get the bigger one like later on. But if you're, like, I think understanding your goal, what you want to do, and then retrofitting your strategy backwards is really good. And especially in the market that we're in right now. So walk me through too, like the mentorship program that you do. I think it's really great. I know we talked about it when you were here in April, but kind of for anybody that's listening that's interested in this, like I said, I don't know any, you're by far the greatest guy I know that's doing this kind of stuff. And the amount of success I've seen from people that have gone through your program and been in your group, they're not just, it's not just like uh, what do I want to say, like
A money
like
grab.
yeah, it's not an exchange relationship where they pay you and you teach them, here's some videos to watch. And they really become part of the family. And like once they're in. And the amount of success that people have had after working with you has been tremendous. And we got to meet some of them when you guys were up here. So what does that program look like? How long is it? What can people expect if they're interested in really diving in?
Yeah. So I didn't ever set out to be a coach or a mentor. I've always mentored people one on one, just because I knew that they could succeed. During COVID, I had a bunch of apartment investors come up to me and say, Ash, we're getting killed. We have COVID tenants that are not paying. We live in tenant friendly states that we can't evict them. So we want to pivot into commercial real estate. Can you teach us? So, sure. We jumped on a Zoom call with about 6 people, spent almost 3 hours giving them everything they needed to get started. And then I had to run, and they said, okay, before you go, how do we keep learning from you? And I'm like, you don't. I'm sorry. Like, I don't have the time to do this. I'm inundated. They're like, well, no, we want to do it. Like, we want to keep learning from you. I said, okay, look, maybe I'll start a coaching program way off into the future. Not anytime soon. They just kept persisting. So I started the mastermind. I took 20 people, and we started teaching them commercial real estate. Every class to this day is live taught by me. There's never a video that you have to watch. And I've done this now. We're going into season 4. Each session lasts for about 6 months. And I take people that were either residential investors, commercial brokers, residential realtors, multifamily investors, mobile home park investors, and we turn them into commercial real estate investors. And you'll never see anybody that goes from residential to commercial back to residential, right? Um, but it's an intensive course, man. We get on Zoom 7:45 p.m. every Tuesday. We go for about 2 to 3 hours. And again, it's not a preset agenda. It's all set the week before by me. And you have full access to me. So when you find a deal, you call me on the phone. And it's intensive, man. It goes about 6 months, and we transform people's mindsets, right? We transform the way they look at deals. And we've had a number of people that have quit their W-2s. We have a young urologist from Wisconsin that just quit his urology practice. This guy's got, 30 years of earning potential, but fell in love with commercial real estate, saw the potential, quit his doctor practice. Um, so that's it, man. I love doing it. It's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done professionally. The qualifier is you have to have some real estate experience. I can't take somebody new and teach them all the basics. So you have to have done some fix and flips, rehabs, residential rentals, something. You need some kind of foundation, and I will turn you into a commercial real estate investor. To
Uh,
also teach people how to raise capital. Somebody once said to me, hey, man, that's great. You got this mastermind that you got a bunch of people looking for deals for you. And I was taken back. I didn't know how to respond to that. But I thought of a story much later on. We had a student who found a deal while we were in class, and he didn't have enough money to take it down. It was a phenomenal deal. And he's like, gosh, will you partner with me on this? I'm like, hell yeah, well, let's go. Instead, I taught him how to raise capital for it. He didn't need me to partner with him. He's since gone on to raise millions for his deals. But I don't want part of my students' deals. I'll teach you how to raise capital for them, right? Teach you how to build your network. And in reality, with commercial real estate, you need 3 things. You need the knowledge, the network, and the deal. We'll give you the knowledge and we'll teach you how to increase your network. All you got to do is find the deal.
Man, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. And that's exactly what I wish I would have had when I got into multifamily. It's why we do what we do, trying to kind of give back and help others. But there's not very many people. I feel like every time you get on social media, there's 1,000 people trying to sell a course on multifamily and whatnot. But there's very, very few that I know, or if any other that I've seen where they're teaching what you're teaching, which I think is why it's so valuable for people that are looking to get into something, because it only takes one, maybe two small deals like you're describing to change your life.
Seth, we had a mastermind member that I wasn't going to let in. The guy just didn't have enough experience. He was the first one in season 3 that found a deal, $420,000 mixed use building that appraised at 1.5 ARV. And he was pissed because he thought it should appraise at 1.8. So, even people at deals at 400,000 can make you potentially close to $1 million, right? You
Yeah.
can't see that. And it was a mixed use building that was on the MLS. It's not like he had to do some crazy stuff to find the deal. The deals are out there. We only take 20 people at a time because I want everybody to build a network. We've done 3 seasons, so we've got 60 people. The next class starts 1 week from tomorrow. So next Tuesday is the official kickoff for season 4. And once class starts, we don't let anybody else in. It goes for 6 months. I take like a little bit of a break. So maybe once a year, we'll have a class, right? So 20 people per year will go through this. It also never ends. Once you're in the mastermind, every Tuesday we will meet and do deal reviews where all the people that have deals can present them, and the entire group will share their knowledge and their thoughts on that deal.
Yeah, that's really valuable as well, because you get, I feel like especially when you're getting started, having more eyes on the deal, it just it's a safeguard, because if you're new and getting started, or even if you've done it one or two, there's just blind spots that you may not even be aware of. And like you said, bringing it in front of a group that has been trained and knows what they're looking at, it kind of helps out point some of the things that really could cause you problems if you didn't catch it early. So
Yeah, and advice for hiring a coach or a mentor: don't ever hire a coach or mentor that's not still in the game, right? So 90% of my time is spent looking for deals, managing the deals that we have, running our business. 10% is the mentorship program. Now, there's a lot of people that have pivoted because they're not making money in real estate anymore. They became coaches. Not okay. You got to still be in the game, right? You've got, because the market's changing drastically. So you've got to be in the front lines if you want to teach others how to be successful.
yeah. So Ash, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? I know I've got the banner on the bottom here that has the website. Is that the best way,
Yeah,
or how
man,
do people
go
reach out
to
to you?
investbeyondmultifamily.com or Osh at investbeyondmultifamily.com. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I answer every email personally, every social media message personally. If you're interested in learning about commercial real estate, again, class starts a week from now. Come to the conference this week if you can make it to Cincinnati. But yeah, I'm easy to get a hold of. And Seth, thank you so much for your time, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for jumping on. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Awesome, brother. Thank you.